To order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Community Development Committee of the Metropolitan Council for June 16th, 2025. I'm Robert Lilligren, council member, the chair of this committee, and we'll move through our agenda. First is the Dakota Land, Water, and People Acknowledgement. And the Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities, representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. So we are called to order. I'm just going to take a moment just to acknowledge the kind of unusual and difficult things that have been happening in our community since last Saturday, and direct attacks on elected officials, and by association attack on our democracy in general. And so I just would feel odd not stopping and acknowledging that as we go forward and recommitting ourselves to good and transparent governance here in our region. So thank you. We have approval of the agenda. There's some dispute of whether we needed a motion or not. I'm not going to ask for a motion this time, Michelle, and unless there's objection, I'm just going to assume that, or assume that we have an approved agenda. Any objections? Hearing none, we have an agenda. Next is approval of the June 2nd, 2025 Community Development Committee minutes. Is there a motion to approve, please?
I'll move that.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Council Members Carter and Wolf. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda. It's one item, Grand Round Missing Link Regional Trail Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. Is there a motion to approve, please?
Mr. Chair, I'll move it, and then I have one quick comment before
Great, cool. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Carter. Discussion, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was approved unanimously by MPOSC, but I just wanted to point out that it's using the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund money, and normally that has not been allowed to be used for land that needs cleanup. Traditionally it's been for ecologically significant properties, but our staff got permission to use it for cleanup for this. This is the first time that it has occurred that way. So I just wanted everybody to know that that was a major change. I don't know if it's going to stay that way going forward, but at least for now, they're allowing it for cleanup properties.
Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. And I see, that this question has come. Did you want staff to comment on that?
No,
on the
I just wanted to let you know, because
appreciate
that's something that's out of the ordinary.
Great. Noted. Thank you. Thank you for that observation. All right, further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries. We'll move on to our non-consent business items. We have 3 tonight. The first is item 2025-148, funding recommendations for round 1 of the tax base revitalization account grants. And Mr. Martin is here to present. Welcome, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for being here, for letting me be here and putting this item on your agenda today.
Thank you.
I will start out here with some background. Make sure I'm getting my slides synced here. There it goes. For anyone that's unfamiliar, the Livable Communities Act, with the Livable Communities Act, that is, all of the LCA grant programs share some goals, including creating more housing choices throughout the region, supporting the growth of living wage jobs, improving connections between where people live and work, and regional amenities like parks, and support for more equitable development outcomes. Participation in LCA is voluntary. We currently have 77 cities and 1 township participating in the program. Projects located in the areas shown in yellow in the map are eligible to apply, and the applicants are cities, counties, or development authorities who partner with developers on individual projects. There are 3 active grant programs in LCA. Today we'll focus on TBRA, which is for projects that support redevelopment on properties with environmental contamination. Together, the LCA programs provide financial support and incentives across the stages of development. The TBRA program offers grant categories that help with planning and design, as well as environmental remediation before starting construction. So it's those middle 2 arrows there. In February, the council approved up to $5.5 million to be awarded in 2 funding cycles. The first round of applications were due in May, and the next cycle will be due in November. And each cycle, we offer 3 types of TBRA grants. Those are environmental site investigation grants, sometimes known as environmental site assessment, environmental cleanup grants, and seeding equitable environmental development grants, or SEED grants, that don't require a specific project and are intended to encourage redevelopment on strategic sites with low levels of building activity, higher concentrations of low-wage jobs, low incomes, or people of color, and show potential for jobs or housing creation. So those are the 3 categories. In terms of the evaluation, our evaluation of each application focuses on what are the expected outcomes. For TBRA, these are things like increase to the tax base, adding affordable housing or living wage jobs, and the relative risks posed by the contaminants. How thoroughly the project has conducted its community engagement, and the qualifications of the development team, as well as their capacity and readiness to proceed with a project. So now we can turn to this funding cycle. We received 7 applications this cycle, 1 seed application from Richfield, 1 investigation application from Inver Grove Heights. This is the first that I'm aware of from Inver Grove Heights, and 5 contamination cleanup applications, and those were from Minneapolis, Richfield, St. Paul, and South St. Paul. The total amount requested was $2.5 million. So next we'll look at the project recommendations, and before I advance that slide, we are recommending a total of $2.4 million. Although the individual project amounts are correct in the business item, there was an error in the sum total. So the total is a correction in Table 1 and the subtotal in Table 5. So I just want to point that out. I'll come back to that. All right, starting with seed. We are recommending funding for 1 seed application from Richfield for a former American Legion property for $35,000 to know more about potential contaminants on a site that's being considered for future multifamily housing. We are recommending funding for 1 investigation application from Inver Grove Heights for the Dickman Trail Industrial Development Site in the amount of $29,300 to assess the feasibility of a future industrial development. And we are recommending 5 cleanup requests for funding with a subtotal of about $2.4 million. Funding is recommended for the Beasley for an affordable ownership housing project for $150,000. We are also recommending funding for over the requested amount for 3 projects listed on the slide to make up for expected shortfalls from our funding partners. So those are starting with Northeast Green campus expansion for affordable apartments and space for youth entrepreneurship for $965,900. Penn Station, also an affordable apartments project for $303,200. And the Curve Northeast for a grocery and daycare for $477,000. The recommended amount for the last project, that is Wakota Crossing for new and retained industrial commercial space, has been reduced to match the eligible cost verified by the environmental reports that were submitted with the application. The recommended grant amount is $471,800. Once complete, the proposed projects will have cleaned up 5 acres of contaminated sites, add over $300,000 to the annual tax base, support over 100 new and retained jobs, and add 75 affordable homes to the region. So shown on the slide here are a few images of what the projects could look like once they're built. So starting clockwise from the upper left, that is an image of Penn Station. Next is the Beasley, and on the bottom is Claire 5 on the Northeast Green expansion site. In closing, the recommendation to the committee is that the Metropolitan Council award 7 tax-based revitalization account grants totaling $2,432,200, and again, that's a correction to the sum total in Table 1, in the business item, and authorize the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, for your work and for your report on this. I have a question, and I'm guessing perhaps another committee member would ask the same question, but I look at the recommendations, and several of them, at least 3, are granting more than was requested, granting more than the amount requested, and then one, the South St. Paul project is less than it was requested. And I'm just wondering if you can speak a little about how those projects are evaluated and how those amounts are determined. Please.
Mr. Chair, yes, thank you for the question. So starting with the ones that are over, brownfield funding is divided among different jurisdictions. We are not the only source of brownfield funding in the region. So we often work in coordination with both the state and the county, particularly Hennepin County in this case, and Ramsey County. So in cases where the applications requests are distributed unevenly and they're both of interest to both bodies. Sometimes what happens is we suggest taking on a higher amount to fund the maximum number of projects possible among all of the agencies in coordination. So that is the case for these here. We're expecting that to be the result.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can comment on the next before, or we can, yeah.
I'm sorry, comment on the.
Oh, you asked also about less, but
right.
I can take questions.
Please. Yeah.
Okay, so in the case of the South St. Paul project, Wakota Crossing, it was a determination of looking at their costs. Their soil volumes didn't quite match what was shown to be contaminated in the estimated soil volumes, rather, in their budget. Didn't quite match what was in their environmental reports. So we've reduced that scope to match. And we're hoping that will still allow the project to go forward.
Thank you. Further discussion on the report, Councilmember Lee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Martin. For this round, the 2.4 million is that a coincidence, or is that the threshold that for this first round we give out 2.4 million, and then in the second round the rest will be given out?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Lee, I'm not sure I quite understood the coincidence part, but any funding remaining would be available in the next round, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion or questions on that report, Councilmember Carter?
Thank you. I really appreciate knowing that these projects are moving forward with funding from the Metropolitan Council. And the pictures are lovely. I do note that there is not attached information. And, a couple of them, it may be very early in terms of the investigation that's happening. But are there additional pieces of information that typically come with our TBRA grants that describe the projects and give more information about them in writing?
Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, most of the information about the specific projects are in the project summary at the back of the business item. We haven't included that here today, but there is more information about kind of each individual one.
It's not included here, not in the presentation.
It's in the other document.
I looked, and I am just blind, I guess. Thank you.
At the bottom of it, there's the project summaries. There aren't the pictures or anything.
Thank you.
There aren't the pretty
Okay,
pictures.
thank you very much. Disoriented, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion on the report? Questions? If not, Mr. Martin has recommended an action for the committee that, hold on, I'm trying to get back to the action. There we are.
Well, you're looking for that.
Yeah, Councilmember Lindstrom.
7 seems like a high number from previous years. Is that right? Or is that typical?
Mr.
seems
Chair,
a little
members of
high
the
to me.
committee, 7 applications, that is, or
Yeah,
7
7
awards, rather?
Yeah, 7 awards. Yep.
No, typically, we have been a little bit in a down cycle for these last 2 rounds, I would say. Typically, we see closer to kind of in that 12 to 15 range.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Good question. Thanks, Councilmember.
Found it.
Found it? Great. Okay, good.
It wasn't working or something.
So, Mr. Martin recommends that we award 7 livable communities tax-based revitalization account grants totaling, that's the correct total, right? Or is it the action?
2.4 is the correct.
Okay, so 2.4322, and authorize the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on our behalf. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, thank you. Did you get that? All right, thanks. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And we'll
Thank
move
you.
on to our next non-consent business item, 2025-149. It's the city of Lake St. Croix Beach and their 2040 comprehensive plan. And Emma Dvorak is here to present. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and Council members. My name is Emma Dvorak, and I'm a Senior Planner in Local Planning Assistance in the Community Development Division. I'm also the Sector Rep for District 11. Before you today is the review of the City of Lake St. Croix Beach's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This is the last outstanding 2040 Comprehensive Plan in District 11.
Yay, well
Just District
done.
11. Thank you. Lake St. Croix Beach is located in the eastern part of Washington County. It is surrounded by communities of Lakeland to the north, St. Mary's Point to the south, and Afton to the west. Across the St. Croix River is Wisconsin. As shown in Figure 1 of your staff report, this map shows the location of regional system components in the city of Lake St. Croix Beach. The city is entirely provided wastewater service using individual private subsurface treatment systems. The plan does not propose or anticipate requesting connection to the regional wastewater disposal system within the planning period. The plan accurately reflects transportation system components, including identifying the regional bike transportation network along County Highway 18. The plan acknowledges Washington County as the park implementing agency for regional park system components in Lake St. Croix Beach. As shown in Figure 2 of the staff report, the city is identified as rural residential community. This community designation consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. Thrive describes rural residential communities as having residential patterns characterized by large lots with no plans to provide urban infrastructure, such as centralized wastewater treatment. Many of these communities have topographical development limitations and a development pattern with lot sizes that generally range from 1 to 2.5 units per acre for their historic platting pattern. Rural residential communities are expected to discourage future development of rural residential patterns where opportunities exist, and a plan for rural development densities that are not greater than 1 unit per 10 acres. A revised household and population forecast appears in this table. Council staff and the city have agreed to this revision. No household growth is planned, given a lack of residential land supply. The revised forecast is highlighted here in this table. The Met Council will forecast 470 households and 1,010 population for 2040 and 2050, and will revise its published household and population forecast in the Imagine 2050 plan simultaneous with action on this plan. As shown in Figure 3 of your staff report, this map reflects both the existing and 2040 planned land use for the city of Lake St. Croix Beach. The city proposes no changes to land use from previous plans. The land use plan also represents the zoning districts within this community. Staff finds that this plan conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. The proposed actions are for the Met Council to authorize Lake St. Croix Beach to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for regional parks and trails and forecasts, and revise the city's Imagine 2050 forecast as described in the advisory comment for forecasts. This item will be on the Metropolitan Council's agenda on June 25th. At this time, I can take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dvorak. Before I turn to the committee members for discussion, I forgot to note that we are joined on the DS by Ms. Heather Giesel, who is the Director of Finance and Administration for both Community Development and for Metropolitan Transportation Services. Welcome, Heather, to the committee. Yeah, thanks. Discussion on that report, any questions? Yeah, Councilmember Cameron.
So it's not specific to this comprehensive plan amendment. It's really, do we place any requirements when something like this happens on a comp plan amendment in terms of public notice that these changes are being made?
So in terms of notification to the community, when their comp plan was deemed incomplete initially, the community received both electronic and snail mail notifications of that. There were subsequent follow-ups from sector reps. I'm not the first sector rep for this district to identify this issue. The community did resubmit a comp plan in 2022, so a few years after their initial comp plan was deemed incomplete. Unfortunately, there were items that they had not addressed that were reflected in our initial letter. At that point, I went out to the community for an in-person visit to work through the remainder of the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion, questions? Mr. Dvorak, I'll congratulate you on bringing all of the District 11 2040 comp plans forward just in time to address Imagine 2050. So if there's no further discussion, Mr. Dvorak proposes 2 actions to authorize the Lake St. Croix Beach to place its 24 comprehensive plan into effect and advise the city to revise its forecast downwards and to implement the advisory comments in the review record for regional parks and trails. Thank you. Councilmember Lee moves approval. Is there a second? Councilmember Wolf, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. And we will move on to our final, thank you, Mr. Dvorak.
Thank you.
Our final non-consent business item, which is item 2025-150. It's funding recommendations for the 2025 Community Tree Planting Grants. And Jillian Greenberg is here to present. Welcome, Ms. Greenberg.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members. I am here today to present the 2025 Community Tree Planting Grant Funding Recommendations. And to start, we'll back up just a little bit and set the stage for this program and these funding recommendations. So the legislature created a new community tree planting grant program and allocated $2.5 million to the Met Council for a competitive program back in 2024. And so you see the program purposes on the screen here as set in state statute: removing and planting shade trees on public land, replacing trees lost to forest pests, disease, and storms, and establishing a more diverse tree canopy. The state statute also set 2 program priorities for this funding. The first priority is projects removing and replacing ash trees that pose public safety concerns. And the second priority is for projects that are located in a census block group with a supplemental demographic index score in the 70th percentile or higher within Minnesota. As you may recall from previous conversations about this program, this supplemental demographic index score is an index that's composed by the Environmental Protection Agency as part of their environmental justice screening tool, and it combines 5 demographic factors into a composite score that reflects community vulnerability. So you see on the map on this screen, the highlighted census block groups are those block groups that are prioritized based on this index. So throughout the fall, Met Council staff was working on developing this program, discussed the program priorities and intentions with the Community Development Committee in November and in January before bringing a notice of funding availability through CDC and then the full council in February. The application period opened March 5th and then closed April 6th. We spent the remainder of April and then through May conducting internal and then a panel review of the applications. So we are here now, June 16th, with funding recommendations before you all, which would then proceed to council approval next Wednesday at the council meeting. On the slide here are the 5 evaluation criteria that were used in this program. The evaluation criteria were accompanied by additional details and a rubric provided to all potential applicants in the review panel, and they were what the review panel was scoring all of the applications brought before you today on. The 5 criteria area are project overview, communication and collaboration, project serves vulnerable residents, project serves residents experiencing extreme heat, and tree canopy health and resilience. And each of those 5 criteria was weighted evenly with potential points. So each one had up to 20 potential points, rounding out each project with receiving up to 100 points. So we received 31 applications for this funding when the application closed on April 16th. 27 of those applications were from cities. We received 3 applications from counties and 1 application from a township. And those applications represented almost every council district. We received requests in those applications for over $5.5 million, which is over double the amount of funding that we had available in this pool this year. The applications ranged from under $14,000 to up to the maximum allowed, which was $500,000. So as I mentioned before, between mid-April and the end of May, we conducted a review process that first began with an internal review. This internal review was looking for application completeness and eligibility, ensuring that the applicant was an eligible applicant and all the expenses in their project were also eligible expenses. That internal review also categorized all of the applications into tiers. So you may remember from conversations around the notice of funding availability, the way we incorporated the legislative priorities into this program was through a tiering process. So if an application met both statutory priorities, the removing and replacing ash trees, and the focus on community vulnerability, that application was placed into Tier 1. If an application met one of those two priorities, the application was placed into Tier 2. And if the application met neither of those priorities, it was placed into Tier 3. We had 22 applications that fell into Tier 1, and they represented over $4.5 million of the funding request in this program. We had 8 applications fall into Tier 2 and 1 application fall into Tier 3. Given that Tier 1 had 22 applications and over $4.5 million in funding requests, Tier 1 applications were the applications that were passed on to the external panel to review. If we had enough funding that those projects, all high-quality projects, had been funded and we still had relevant funding, we would have conducted a Tier 2 review, but all of the funding was used up in Tier 1 projects. So we had a 6-member review panel that consisted of 2 council members. We also had 1 Equity Advisory Council member on the panel, and then representatives from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, and Great River Greening, reviewing those applications. They met at the beginning of May for an orientation about the program and what their review process would look like, and then at the end of May came together for a conversation around their review, their scores, and to develop the recommendations that are brought before you today. So with that, these on the screen are the 14 projects recommended for funding. After the review panel discussion of applications, there was funding available to fully fund the first 13 highest scoring applications, with some remaining funding available for the 14th application. The review panel had a conversation about this, and because they felt that those top 14 applications were all high-quality applications that strongly represented the program purpose and priorities, that we should aim to try to fund all 14. And the review panel recommended that we go to the 4 applications that were requesting over $250,000 and slightly reduce their award amount to be able to fully fund that 14th application. So Met Council staff has worked with those 4 applicants. When doing the math, it worked out their project award would be 9% less than the requested funding the funding that they requested in those applications, and those updated amounts are reflected in the recommendations before you. So pending final approval by the Met Council next week, the Met Council staff will work with each of these applicants to get grant agreements executed, and we plan to backdate the project activity period to May 1st so that applicants have some flexibility to pay for expenses that they have already incurred during this planting season that fit within the project scope. We're looking at this as an important way to provide flexibility, given that this funding, because of the state funding source, has a hard deadline of June 30th, 2027. We're not anticipating being able to provide extensions, so being able to provide a little flexibility during this 2025 planting season gives our applicants, our grantees, a little bit more wiggle room in their projects. So all of these 14 applications come to the $2.5 million that we have allocated for this program. Just some final reflections on this new program, and as I note here, of course, we're doing further analysis and reflections, and we'll be bringing more back to you, but we saw a lot of really high quality applicants come through, as you heard with the 31 applications, a really high interest and need for this type of funding throughout the region. We saw applicants really strive to reflect the program priorities in their application, as reflected in that 22 of the 31 applications were in that Tier 1, meeting both of those program priorities. We do note that communities that did not have any areas in the prioritized community vulnerability census block groups could not be competitive for the funding source right now because they couldn't meet that program priority. So that's something we're thinking about in the layout of this program and what it might look like going forward. We also heard from this review panel and the feedback that they provided us that they thought that the scoring criteria could further emphasize the program priorities to ensure that the funding criteria was best meeting the communities that showed the greatest needs based on these priorities. The final note I have on the future of this program is that in the state budget that was just passed last week, and I think signed by the governor today, there's $1 million in bonding and $900,000 in general funds allocated to this work. And so it contains a very similar language around the program purpose and program priorities, and we'll be working through what the future of the program looks like with that in mind. So with that, the council action before you today is that the Met Council award 14 community tree planting grants totaling $2.5 million as shown in Table 1 of the business item. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Greenberg, for the report and for your work on this. And I have a quick question too before I turn to committee members. And we have other tree planting grants, right? This isn't all, this is the funds that were directed by the state legislature, come with the statutory requirements, but we have other tree planting grants, correct?
There have been tree planting grants for park implementing agencies,
Right.
That are separate than this. But at this point, I don't believe that there are other grant programs for cities, counties, and
like
townships
this. Okay.
directed towards tree
Thank you,
planting.
that's helpful. Discussion by committee members on that report, questions? Yeah, Councilmember Carter.
You know, I will just say that I am really impressed with the program having come to us, the information that you provided to us, listening to us, and helping to guide the program criteria, and now the presentation of these grant awards according to the categories and those most in need and fitting the program. I just feel this has gone very, very well. I'm impressed that we've been able to award funds across the metropolitan region, and that there's a lot of need, clearly. So very, very happy for the program, and thank you for the presentation of this up until now. Looking forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and I will point out there was more than twice the request as the funds available, right? So there's huge interest, huge need, as you say, Councilmember, and I really commend staff. This program had to be stood up very quickly, right? This is just from the, if I'm not mistaken, 2023?
2024.
24 legislative session, and so incredible work, incredibly fast work. Great. Councilmember Carter.
I don't know if we're ready for a motion, but.
Yeah, go for it,
Happy to make it.
please. Yep.
Thank you.
Great. So Councilmember Carter moves the recommendation that we award 14 community tree planting grants totaling $2.5 million. Is there a second?
I'll second that. And
Thanks.
Make a comment.
Please, Councilmember Lindstrom.
I'll say to my fellow council members, if you have a week of nothing to do, sign up to be a reviewer for these 31 applications that came through that are each quite thick, right, Councilmember Wolf? That was a task that we signed up for, but it was really eye-opening for me in a lot of different ways. One, the need out there. That's so many of these communities said, like a mid-sized suburb would say, we have 20,000 trees in our parks or on our boulevards, and 20% are ash trees. And you start running the numbers in your head, and it's like a couple grand per tree to remove, plant, take care of, get community engagement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a huge issue, and there are state grants available, which perhaps that's what you were thinking of. The other eye-opening thing for me reviewing these proposals is looking at that supplemental demographic index score and seeing clear as day that it's not just the core cities that have these census blocks that meet this criteria of of these environmental justice factors that go into the supplemental demographic index score. And I'll just double down on saying I thought the whole process was really well run. Clearly, we got the word out, or the word got out in some way, shape, or form that these funds are out there and they are for this specific purpose with these priorities. And all us, the folks that were part of the external panel got all the information early and had plenty of time to review it. And I really like the makeup of the external panel. The fact that there was folks from the DNR there, tree experts, as well as community perspectives. It really made for a good, diverse panel to look at these grants.
Great, well said, and thanks, Councilmember Lindstrom. Councilmember Wolf, were there other council members that were part of the review panels? That is arduous work, and so to all of the people who participated, thanks very much. Yeah, Councilmember Wolf.
It was a lot. It was more work than I anticipated
Me
it was
too.
going to be when I signed up to do it, because I wanted to do a thoughtful job and be fair and consistent. So I had to, you learn things as you're going through all of those. So then I had to go back and say, okay, am I being consistent with the ones from the beginning and whatnot? So it was a lot of work. And we had a lot of recommendations for improvements for the next round of scoring, because some things are differentiators, some are not. Some things were, you scored better if you had good grant writers rather than if you had the need, and so getting away from that and making sure that you have opportunities, even if you're not a good grant writer, is one of the things that came back in that as well. But all of the applications were good applications. It's unfortunate that we couldn't fund every single one of them, but that compromise to fund the 14th project, which was very much in the core of what this program was about, but they were only going to get $14,000. It was good that we were able to find a compromise so that that one could be funded as well. So,
Great work. Thanks for your insight as well. Look forward to the next round, for sure. We have the motion to approve the community tree planting grants as recommended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Greenberg, for that. And that concludes our business items for today. So we'll move on to our information items. We have two. The first is the 2025 Housing Choice Voucher Waitlist opening updates. And we are joined by Ryan Ottenheim-Leifheit and Caitlin Magstad to report. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us with you tonight. We are going to provide you an update on Metro HRA's recent Housing Choice Voucher waitlist opening. My name is Ryan Ottenheim-Leifheit. I'm the Manager of Outreach and Special Initiatives here at Metro HRA, and I have my colleague Caitlin Magstad, who is an Outreach Coordinator and Resident Engagement Specialist for our team. This evening, we'll briefly share a review of the Housing Choice Voucher waitlist process and purpose. Caitlin will share some details about our community outreach and engagement leading up to and through the waitlist opening, and we'll wrap up by sharing some results and data about the waitlist opening. Very briefly, I'll ground us with a quick overview of Metro HRA again. The map here shows the HRA's service area covering all of Anoka and Carver counties, as well as suburban Hennepin and Ramsey counties, encompassing 96 cities total. Metro HRA serves just over 7,300 households through 9 different voucher-based programs, resulting in $90 million in annual rent payments going out to our community of more than 1,400 active property owners. The significant majority of voucher holders get their voucher through a waitlist process, so we're happy to be here today to talk about what that looks like. As a reminder, this year, Metro HRA opened our Housing Choice Voucher, or Section 8, waitlist for the first time since 2022. The waitlist application was available online from April 9th to April 16th. During the Housing Choice Voucher waitlist opening, we expect several thousand more applications than spots available for admission on the waitlist. Since there are more applicants than vouchers available, Metro HRA uses a lottery process to admit applicants to the waitlist. This lottery is conducted through the computer and is completely random, like pulling names out of a hat. During this year's waitlist opening, we informed applicants that the lottery would take place on May 1st and that the results of this lottery would be available to applicants through their online account on the morning of May 1st. We also informed applicants that they could expect anywhere from a 1 to 5 year wait for issuance of their voucher if their name was selected in the lottery. This broader window was provided just based on some level of uncertainty and funding questions in the future. This year, Metro HRA admitted 1,000 applicants to our waitlist. Metro HRA's waitlist application is available to all people who wish to apply. All persons who are low income or rent burdened are especially encouraged to apply. There is no penalty for applying and if an applicant is later found to be ineligible. With the help of our communications department, interpreters, and internal staff, all of our waitlist materials were translated into the most commonly spoken languages here at Metro HRA, that being Somali, Hmong, and Spanish. Furthermore, the online application supported over 200 additional languages, and staff at Metro HRA's offices were available to provide interpretation over the phone. The waitlist application is intended to be low barrier and easy to complete. An applicant can set up their account and complete their application in about 10 minutes with only their name, address, and email address. The application also asks for several other questions about the applicant and their household's demographic, student status, and disability status. Applicants will provide similar information for all of their household members. We also ask applicants to provide their physical address, an estimate of their household's income, and answers to 2 preference questions that we'll talk about here next. Housing authorities have discretion to establish local admission preferences for their Housing Choice Voucher waitlist. These preferences allow housing authorities to prioritize the admission of applicants based on specific criteria, such as homeless status, domestic violence, or residency within a jurisdiction, and help support local housing authority goals, such as reducing veterans' homelessness or assisting persons with disabilities. For the first time this year, at the recommendation of the Metropolitan Council's American Indian Advisory Council, Metro HRA updated our administrative plan to set aside a percentage of waitlist placements for households that identify as American Indian. Staff from Metro HRA engaged with the American Indian Advisory Council, current voucher holders who identify as American Indian, and the broader American Indian community to determine that 10% of our waitlist placements would first go to households who identify as American Indian. Metro HRA then retained our residency preference for admission, which has been in place for several years. After the first 10% of our waitlist was populated with people who identify as American Indian, the remaining 95% of waitlist placements went to persons who live, work, or go to school in the 7-county metro region. Any remaining placements were then available to applicants who were outside of the 7-county metro region. The HRA's outreach was built upon previous community engagement in 2022. I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin, who will tell us a little bit more about our community engagement.
Great, thanks, Ryan, and council members. So as you all know, deep need for affordable housing in our community, and we know that it's a complicated system, so we worked hard to try to get the word out to lots of different partners: libraries, schools, counties, cities, nonprofits, religious institutions, food banks, post-secondary institutions. We had a service provider training. So as Ryan mentioned, the waitlist application is online. Like any good, secure online system with lots of personal data, it's a little clunky. So we like to offer some technical assistance to community providers that are going to be helping their clients apply for the waitlist. And prior to my time here at Metro HRA, I worked in a variety of housing nonprofits as a case manager, and so I would have been out knocking on everybody's door asking them to apply during that period. And so we were happy to have about 25 service providers who attended this Zoom online training live. We also posted a recording of it and some screenshots of the online system to our website for folks that weren't able to join live. Ryan mentioned that we have about 1,400 active landlords in the program. We also sent a flyer to any owner that had received housing assistance payments in the past 2 years. So even if they didn't have a current rent assistance payment coming from us, they're aware of the program. They can help us spread the word as well. Some internal collaborations that we focused on, making sure that we let our TAP colleagues know about the program. They helped table at our events that we did for resident engagement, and we'd like to continue that in the future. And we also asked TAP to share the information about the waitlist opening with their broad network of partners. We also partnered with Metro Transit's Homeless Action Team. They had outreach materials and the schedule of community locations during the week of the opening so that they could refer folks if they're able to apply online or let them know the community locations that were available. Did I miss anything on this slide? Okay, a few other things. So we also worked with some consultants through the Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness. We're really lucky to have some folks with lived experience who provide their time, expertise, and passion to the Housing Authority and other folks in the organization. And so they helped give some feedback as we were preparing for the waitlist opening and also helped support our community outreach in the libraries. As we've mentioned, communications helped us quite a bit get ready for this opening, so a big shout out to the communications team here at the council. We had print, digital, social media campaigns, the flyer and the website updates, the different language access. On the outreach team, my intern and I focused on creating a comprehensive big old distribution list. So we had folks that had previously signed up for updates about the Housing Authority's waiting list. We updated that list, checked other websites, publicly available information, handbook of the streets, asked our coworkers if they're on any listservs or groups, just really tried to think of as many possible ways as possible to get the word out. Included culturally specific organizations, religious institutions, age-specific providers, right, for youth, for seniors, the folks that are in our service area as far as county and city partners, but beyond that as well. We know that Metro HRA's service area is probably meaningless to a lot of people in the Metro because they don't know about the complicated web of housing authorities. We also focused on reaching out to contacts at school districts. So we asked the Minnesota Department of Education has a great list, many lists on their website that my intern helped review for McKinney-Vento liaisons, foster care liaisons, early childhood, family, and special education, as well as liaisons at post-secondary institutions, particularly like community colleges that have a food shelf or something like that. Ryan has mentioned that we did some engagement with the American Indian community leading up to that preference that we placed on our list. So this slide just mentions a little bit of that engagement. We've met with the AIAC prior to the waitlist opening. Ryan and I recently gave them an update as well, had some sessions and feedback with American Indian voucher holders over the winter. Prior to the waitlist opening, HRA's director, Terry Smith, went to a couple different community groups, St. Paul Indians in Action and Metro Urban Indian Directors Group, to share the information. And we also, Terry and Chair Lilligren were on the Native Roots Radio Hour, and we had an ad in the Circle. And then we've mentioned during the waitlist opening, a week of outreach. So the waitlist was open a Wednesday to a Wednesday, which might seem kind of random, but it was important to allow folks time on the weekend. During business hours, staff were available. Metro HRA staff signed up for shifts across the Metro. So we provided more than 115 hours in the community at a wide variety of libraries, as well as 2 government centers in Carver County. We also had staff that were available here for walk-ins and by phone, and that individual outreach in the community was about 188 applicants who were able to apply that probably otherwise would not have.
All right, thank you. I'll take it back. We'll talk about some results of the opening, show you some numbers here. So here on the far right column, you'll see we had 11,172 applications received during the 7 days Metro HRA's Housing Choice Voucher waitlist was open this year. This result is very much in line with the waitlist opening in 2022. Our 2019 waitlist opening, you'll see the number is significantly higher there. That waitlist was open concurrently with Minneapolis Public Housing and St. Paul Public Housing. Folks through one application could choose to apply to all three. So we think that's why we saw a slightly higher number or a significantly higher number in 2019 there. Of the 11,172 applicants in 2025, 1,000 were admitted to the waitlist. You see here that is also a smaller number than previous years. Admitting this smaller number to the waitlist in 2025 allows Metro HRA a little more flexibility to open the waitlist again in a shorter time and to make sure that our contacts stay really fresh and reachable. Here we have a little bit of household demographic information. We did see that fewer households with children applied this year than in previous years, despite the point-in-time count known as the PIT, showing us the total count of people and families experiencing homelessness has increased 81% since 2022. That trend is particularly concentrated in the metro area. We don't yet understand why this number is notably lower. We will be conducting some more outreach with those who have applied and people already in our community to try to find out what might have made this difference. We saw very similar rates of applicants with a disabled head of household as in previous years, as well as this kind of continual and gradual increase in applicants with an elderly head of household, something we expect to see continuing. We see the highest percentage of applicants experiencing homelessness as any year since we began asking applicants to report this answer. And lastly, here we saw the significant majority of our waitlist applications being received from those folks who do live, work, or go to school in the 7-county metro region. Here, just a little bit more granular information about race and ethnic demographics. The data here shows lots of consistency, again, year over year. I do want to highlight this small increase in American Indian applicants in 2025. For the previous 3 waitlist openings, the percentage of American Indian applicants held consistent at 3% of the overall applicant pool. This 1% increase is really significant to us and represents more than 130 additional American Indian applicants that made their way to us this year. I'll wrap up here on our final slide with a little bit of information about what comes next. Once applicants review their status on May 1st, they're transitioned onto our waitlist to wait for this voucher to actually come available. As of now, about 18% of our applicants admitted to the waitlist have logged into their account and completed this process. Over the coming months, Metro HRA staff will work to help the remaining 800 or so applicants find out that they made it through the waitlist process and update their information in our system. Metro HRA staff will start by contacting selected applicants through writing and provided email addresses, mailing addresses, phone numbers. Selected applicants can review a step-by-step guide on what to expect posted on Metro HRA's website. Our outreach team will also connect with several different shelters, day shelters, congregate housing situations, identified as commonly used addresses among our waitlist applicants to help those who might not have access to reliable mail, email, or phones make this final transition. And eventually staff will conduct one-on-one outreach trying to find everybody who was selected to make sure they know the information and know what to do next. Metro HRA's leadership will also continue to share our experience, policies, and best practices used in planning and implementing our American Indian preference with our regional and national partners. And I'll also say there are 563 households remaining on Metro HRA's waitlist from the previous opening in 2022. We will first serve those remaining waitlist applicants before moving on to the additional 1,000 that were added in 2025. I'll finish by saying the timeline for admission to our waitlist does continue to be dependent upon the attrition rate of current voucher holders and what federal funding looks like in the coming years. I want to say thank you, Caitlin and I both, for your time, attention, and commitment to the families in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Ryan, for this work. This is really informative and useful. Discussion on that report, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple questions. On the waitlist opening results, there's an increase in homelessness, and then there was a decrease in households with children. Do you know how many of those experiencing homelessness were single adults, households?
Yes, we would be able to tell that information. I don't have it in front of me, but we can I'm sorry, Chair, Council Member, yes. I don't have that information in front of me, but we would certainly be able to discern.
Yeah, because I know that is a big problem, and the way that we got our allocation for, some of our programs is prioritizing the households with children, which makes sense, but we also have a lot of the folks that are on this, homeless on the streets are single individuals. So it would be nice to keep track of that in the reporting. And then the second question is those folks that you're trying to reach, when you do reach them, you're telling them that they're on the waiting list and that they may have to wait 1 to 5 years. Is that correct?
Chair, Council Member, yes, that's correct. When we do reach them, they'll get some good news. You made it to the wait list, but the wait does look like 1 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, this households with children, the decrease is a little bit of a head scratcher, right? Because
Yes.
I've always understood that the two fastest growing populations of our unsheltered relatives are elderly and youth. So it's curious. It'll be interesting to dig deeper. Further discussion on this report? Further discussion? Seeing none, Caitlin, Ryan, thanks so much for the report, for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And committee members, we'll move on to our final information item for today. It's very interesting. I think the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan Amendment. This is about modernizing mapping. And Tracy Kinney is here and Kevin Pond. Welcome.
Chair, council members, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Kinney. I'm a planning analyst in Regional Parks and Trails and Community Development. Today I'm joined by Kevin Fan, also in Regional Parks and Trails. Today we will be presenting the proposed amendment to the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan, specifically focused on the Modernizing Mapping GIS, or Geographical Information Systems project. At the conclusion of this presentation, we welcome your advice and hope to receive your support in advancing this proposal as a policy plan amendment business item in September. This item will then head to the Metropolitan Council for consideration to open the public comment period later that month. So, in today's presentation, we will briefly cover the following topics: the background and proposed changes, long-range planning, context and identified corrections, locations affected by the amendment, examples of the proposed corrections, and the next steps in the process. At the June 6th Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission meeting, Council Parks staff presented a similar item to this. We made some tweaks based on our learnings. And we also want to thank Councilmember Wolf for your robust attendance. Did you want to start off saying anything about the meeting? Okay, thank you.
Other than that, it was a good discussion. The group was very involved and had some very good questions, and so I'm glad you were able to respond to their concerns.
Thank you, Chair, Councilmember. So before you is a summary of their advice. The Metropolitan Parks and Open Space supports the use of Geographic Information Systems, more commonly known as GIS, as a primary reference, not a land record, for tracking regional trail boundaries, regional park and trail boundaries. They suggested to clearly define the intended uses of the GIS data set, including funding allocation, acreage calculations, ongoing planning, and addressing gaps or inconsistencies in existing land records. And lastly, MPOSC suggested to determine the appropriate path forward for this proposal. So after the meeting, Council Park staff consulted with General Counsel and Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director, and Council staff confirmed that this proposal would modify the Section 2 system plan of the 2050 Regional Parks and Policy Plan. So as such, it should proceed as a policy plan amendment rather than a routine business item. So since 1974, the Regional Parks and Trails system has expanded significantly, underscoring the need to modernize mapping and data tools. Over the past 4 years, Met Council and implementing agency staff have collaborated on the Modernizing Mapping GIS project to create a consistent, detailed GIS dataset for tracking park and trail boundaries. This proposal in today's information item would formally integrate the GIS dataset into the existing boundary mapping system, which currently relies on approved long-range plans and legal land records. GIS data will support approved long-range plans by providing a higher level of detail. Legal records will continue to serve as a foundation for land exchanges, acquisitions, and boundary adjustments. As part of the Modernizing Mapping project, Met Council and agency staff collaborated to ensure consistency between the approved long-range plans and GIS data. This review identified several minor but necessary amendments to reconcile long-standing discrepancies between the mapped data and approved plans. Council staff now propose to amend Section 2 system plan of the 2050 Regional Parks and Trails Policy Plan to establish the GIS dataset as a primary reference and to align the system plan boundaries with the GIS data. The long-range plans will remain the primary vehicle for council approvals, but will now be used in concert with the GIS on file, which offers a greater level of detail and is updated annually. To move forward with both the long-range plans and GIS consistent with one another, there are a number of minor changes needed. The types of plan amendments that you will now see include corrections to boundaries due to past mapping inaccuracies or human error. And 2, trail implementation adjustments resulting from on-the-ground implementation, typically through the willing seller process. So on the screen is a map showing the locations of the proposed amendments. They will be refined and advanced for the September business item. The red circles indicate boundary corrections, while the green circles indicate trail implementation adjustments. As you can see, these amendments are distributed throughout the Regional Parks and Trail system. So with that, I'll now hand it off to Kevin, who will walk us through the specific examples of the amendments and outline the next steps of the process.
Thank you. Mr. Fan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. So moving on into the next part, we'll be going through some of the examples of these amendments that are being proposed. These are specifically for the correction examples, which are essentially categorized as corrections due to issues or discrepancies that arose from the improved precision of GIS mapping. This was essentially just because previously a lot of old long-range plans had hand-drawn maps. So now as we are moving into a digital system, these discrepancies are being identified. So the 2 cases you'll see on the screen right now are Anoka County's Martin Iwan Linwood Lakes Regional Park, and that can also be found as figure 6 in the information item and as the second item in the first table of the information item. So this amendment proposes the addition of 4 parcels, which would ultimately add 0.68 acres of parkland to the 735-acre park. This change would ultimately amount to far less than 1% of the total acreage of the regional park. On the right-hand side, we have Carver County's Lake Minnewaska Regional Park, and this can also be found as Figure 8 in the information item or as line item 5 in the first table. This amendment is proposed to add a small amount of parkland at the southeast part of the park towards the entrance, and it results in a 0.4 acre addition to the 330 acre park, which would again be less than 1% acreage change to the park. Moving on into the next category of proposed amendments. These are known as trail implementation, or this is the criteria that they are listed under. And essentially these are minor trail realignments that were simply made as a result of the implementation of the trail over time through the willing seller process. On the left-hand side, we have Ramsey County's Birch Lake Regional Trail, which is listed as Figure 24 in the information item and is the second item listed in the second table. This proposed amendment aims to realign the regional trail to be along Hammond Road and Township Parkway to connect with Bald Eagle Otter Lake Regional Park. This alignment ultimately shifts 0.24 miles from the original alignment. On the right-hand side, we have Dakota County's Veterans Memorial Greenway Regional Trail. This is Figure 23 in the information item and is the first item in the second table. And this ultimately proposes a realignment to the trail segment between Rich Valley Boulevard and Highway 52. And this alignment shifts the trail approximately 0.75 miles north from the original alignment.
Mr. Fan, I don't know if people are paying attention and following online. The online presentation has a different example for it, rather than the Dakota County. It has a Three Rivers Park example, the Baker Carver Regional Trail Amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chair and council members, we can provide a little bit of an update or some context around that discrepancy, but we've been actively working with our implementing agency partners to ultimately confirm and go through these separate amendment cases. And in the past week, we've had a change with Baker Carver Regional Trail, so we switched it out with Veterans Memorial.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Thank you. And then moving on into the next steps, so we presented, as we mentioned last 2 weeks ago, to the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission and to you, the Community Development Committee today with an information item proposing this policy plan amendment. And if we continue to have your support, we will then start to move forward in providing additional context and information by working with our implementing agency partners. So that will occur throughout the summer months before we bring it back in September as a policy plan amendment business item with the intention of releasing this for public comment. And then we will continue through that policy plan amendment process. So we will, we're anticipating a potential public hearing on the week of November 5th of 2025, looking at potentially closing a public comment period in November 17th of 2025, and then having a Metropolitan Council consideration for adoption sometime in December. And that will be the intention to complete this policy plan amendment by the end of this year. With that said, we're happy to hear any questions, and we thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for the work, Mr. Fan. Ms. Kinney, any questions on that report? Questions? Yeah, Councilmember Cameron.
I guess I'm a little confused. So is it that the GIS, the land record and plats are the ultimate guidance, right? So how did the long-range plan, because those are presumably documents and descriptions and hand drawings as well. So how did the long-range plan differentiate from that? And is that is the ultimate record that the GIS system is using when we're making these corrections? Do I have that right?
Ms. Kinney.
the land record is the ultimate record. The GIS is updated annually, and the long-range plans are a really high-level document that always follow the parcel boundaries for the most part, unless they're super old plans, but yet they provide a much higher level of detail. And then the GIS is updated annually, so there's always implementation. There's possible implementation changes. Does that help?
I think so. Could you give an example of how that implementation, what would be the need for that continuous update on the GIS system?
Sure, yeah.
Like a concrete example.
Yeah. Chair, council members, throughout the year, we have approvals. So a search corridor would be updated to a planned corridor, and then the implementing agency is able to then implement it. So then, it can apply for funding. It starts implementing the trail, and then different segments become online and open to the public. As we had mentioned before, some of the trails are, when trails are developed, it's through a willing seller process, and that is hard to plan. And so those land holdings then become part of the trail data set as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. I asked a very similar question when I was being briefed on this agenda. Cool. Other discussion, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Just curious if you anticipate any controversy from the park implementing agencies on this. They're on board, they're supportive.
Chair, council members, we have heard support for using the GIS. The implementing agencies have been part of our team for over 4 years with building the GIS data set. We have originally set out to build the data set for, we're hoping, all agency council processes, particularly the operations and maintenance funding process. And so we're hoping to move towards using the data set for that process. This would codify that and allow us to move forward with that. Many of the agencies are already using the GIS data for these calculations. So this would just codify what we're already doing in everyday daily work.
Great.
Well, thank you. Further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, thanks very much. This is very interesting. Look forward to seeing this work its way through the approval process. So thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we have completed our agenda for today. Ms. Giesel, anything for the committee?
Nope.
Great. Michelle? Great. Seeing no further business before this committee, we're adjourned.